It is day 23 of the 118th House of Horrors, led by the egregious Kevin McCarthy. And Waj, I'm thinking that we might have to change our graphics soon because we have a little George Santos peeking over the edge, but I'm not so sure he's going to be here to kick around anymore.
That was an amazing intro. I just want to see that movie. Like, I love horror movies, and it's one of those things where I'm like repulsed, but at the same time so enticed
Yeah.
by that promo.
Yeah, I they did a great job. I love it. So this is your first time on House of Horrors, so thank you so much for being here. But before we jump in, you had big news this week. Can you tell us what happened and what
Yes,
people need to do?
the paperback version of my book, Go Back to Where You Came From, and other helpful recommendations on how to become American dropped, and you were kind enough to give it a plug and a very lovely review blurb. It came out a year ago, and over the past year, it's had really nice, word of mouth book clubs. My initial book tour, like so many others, was cut short due to the COVID variant, and it's really nice to see it get another lease at life. So if
Yeah.
you have a couple of bucks, give it a spin. My mom says it's pretty good.
High praise. High
Very high
praise.
praise. Pakistani immigrant mother.
Um, but honestly, everybody, it is a phenomenal book. It's an excellent read. It's very, very funny, which should surprise absolutely no one. And as you know, I completely empathize about the whole book tour thing, or not having a book tour thing twice.
Oh, it happened to you twice? I knew the second
Yeah,
one. Oh,
yeah. The first
oh.
one came out in July 2020, which was a very bad time.
Not the
And the
best time. Not the best time to
yeah,
release a book,
the
Mary.
second one came out in August 2021.
Oh,
So
exquisite timing.
yeah, so I'll just have to write another book, and you'll have to write another book, and we'll just keep writing books, and hopefully someday we will get our day in the sun that is known as book tour.
Yeah, one day, inshallah, maybe.
Okay, so since it's your first time here, just lay down the ground rules. We start just listing our top 3 horrors of the week.
I love it.
And then, there might be some overlap, there might not. And then we'll just discuss the 2 or 3 or 4, however much we have time for, that are the most interesting to us. So, what are your top 3 for this week?
All right, in no specific order. The fact that Kevin McCarthy, the spineless amoeba of a man, or the replicant resembling a man. Actually, I don't want to disrespect replicants because they were
Yeah,
actually very humane in Blade Runner. Yeah,
exactly.
this thing representing a man without a spine. The fact that he just rewarded Chip Roy, Thomas Massey, and Ralph Norman, 3 of the most extreme Republicans who are not just obstructionists, Mary, but want to destroy the government. They're on the House Rules Committee. And by the way, folks, there were the 3 of the 21 who basically kept him through the 15-round masochistic gauntlet. And he's like, I'll reward you. So that's one. Number 2, the New York Times report that said, quoted a friend of Kevin McCarthy under anonymity, that Kevin McCarthy said, I will never leave that woman. Who is that woman? Marjorie Taylor Greene.
So sweet.
Yeah, who is also, apparently, according to reports, gunning to beat Donald's VP candidate in 2024, and now sits in the House Oversight Committee. And the third horror, there's so many. Okay, wait, I have to do this just because we have to talk about it. George Federico Anthony Santos III, otherwise known as Spartacus, otherwise known as Batman, the first man on the moon in drag. The fact that there's so many lies. I mean, we could just do a 30 minutes on Santos. So just
Yeah, well, I forgot to tell you, but that's okay because there's always something to talk about. He is sort of an evergreen presence on the list, so we don't even, because there was one week Charlotte had him at every single one of her slots, and everybody had him on their list. So I'm like, you know what? He's always on the list unless and until he is no longer in Congress. So,
So with that, if
definitely
he's
talk about that.
evergreen, I will say the debt ceiling crisis. The fact that all the 4 people that I mentioned, especially the first 3, I think there's something different here with this debt ceiling crisis, because when it last happened, Mitch McConnell at least was the head who was able to come in and keep the government running without any concessions. But I think these guys, if you actually know their record, they want to destroy the government.
Yeah.
So that debt ceiling crisis is the third thing that scares me, with the evergreen being Jorge Santos.
Exactly. He probably doesn't even know what Jorge means. Okay, so there is overlap. I also have debt ceiling brinksmanship on my list. But part of it, part of my the reason it's on the list is the way it's being talked about in the media, which we'll get to. First is similar to yours. It's related to the refusal to see Schiff, Swalwell, and Omar, but
Mm,
I want to dig deeper into why it's not just a tit for tat. You know how it's qualitatively different from
right.
what Democrats did to Green and Gosar. And I know we've talked about it before, but it's so important to me, and I think it's so important we keep in mind what's going on here. That it's on my list again. And third, I just read before we came that McCarthy had said that if the ethics committee finds that Santos had broke the law, he would kick him out of Congress. I'm not
Mm,
holding my breath. But in doing so, he, not surprisingly, proved himself once again to be such a fluent and obvious liar that third on my list is Kevin McCarthy's existence. Now, I know that can also be evergreen, but he makes his debut as a
I think he
constant
will be an
horror.
evergreen. Him and
Yeah,
Santos are just like it's like
yeah,
herpes. They're
yeah,
conservative herpes. It will just stay forever.
yeah. And also, I forgot that you're Californian, so when you said horror, the way you say it, I was very confused because it
Oh,
doesn't.
how do I say it? How do you say it?
Horror,
And I said horror.
horror, which
Oh my
sounds like
god,
a different word. And
hella horrific.
if you're from the Northeast, it's a little confusing. Anyway, all right, so let's dive in. Where do you want to start? How about you know what? How about we start with the debt ceiling
Yeah.
because the media, so many outlets in the media are portraying it as a partisan standoff.
Mm.
Like there's something the Democrats should be doing to fix this problem. Well, there is, but that's a different issue entirely. But the problem with that, besides the fact that it's absurd and wrong, is that the debt ceiling's like the electoral college. It's unique to America, and it's so absurd and unnecessary that most Americans don't even understand what it means. So it makes it possible for Republicans to play these extremely dangerous games, right?
Yeah, and this is the failure of framing, right? Because the initial framing, especially the New York Times, was like Congress nears debt ceiling crisis, and you're like, whoa, 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 whoa! It's not Congress. You have to inform people why we're reaching this crisis, this manufactured crisis. It's because a handful of Republicans, yet again, have decided to hijack the government. It's the Republicans who are doing it, and they want massive spending cuts to some of the most popular programs such as Social Security and Medicare. And oh, by the way, the last time they did this successfully, S&P downgraded our credit rating for the first time, and it caused havoc on the economy for 6 months, which increased costs and hurt our country. And Republicans are perfectly fine being economic terrorists and hijacking the country for their authoritarian ends. That's kind of how you have to explain it to people, Mary.
Yeah.
But the way it's been going on is, well, Congress is at a brinkmanship again, and they can't figure it out. And like you said, the average Jose or Jorge sits there and goes, "These Democrats and Republicans, they don't work for us." And you're like, you can criticize the Democrats all you want, but it's these extremist Republicans are perfectly fine pushing our country off the cliff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I again, it's it should be so simple to convey to the American people that essentially what the Republicans are doing is saying, if you don't let us destroy the American economy in this way, we're going to destroy the American economy and the global economy.
That's right.
That's like literally what they're saying. If we don't let them cut Social Security and Medicare, which by the way are two programs that people pay for their Social Security. It's not
Yeah. We pay into it.
yeah, there's no entitlement here. These are programs that keep a lot of Americans out of poverty, for God's sakes.
That's right.
So if we don't allow millions of Americans to slip back into poverty, we're going to destroy the world.
And also shut down the government, which will also seize federal benefits, which will also cause gridlock and chaos, in addition to a global recession, like you mentioned.
yeah, and the way McCarthy is putting it, it kind of makes me crazy. It's like, we won't pay our debts that we already accrued unless we make future cuts. And I mean, I don't think American Express would be cool with my like making that deal with them. It's like I'll pay you guys eventually, but maybe. But
Yeah.
I have to like work on my budget first.
Yeah, yeah. And also, you have to make sure that you lower your interest rates for my cousins and my friends. And speaking about cousins and friends, the other reason, again, if you have to give context, which is what U.S. press doesn't do, is the reason for this in particular is because they want to take away money from two of the most popular public programs that lift people out of poverty, and they want to cut taxes for the rich. And they're doing it nakedly and openly to the point where Kevin McCarthy, I don't know if he's on your evergreen, but I think he's on one of your three, also has introduced this new Republican plan that won't pass the Senate. But the fact that they're even openly saying it is like, I want to increase taxes on the middle class. I want to propose a national 30% tax.
Yeah.
Why? Just so the rich can get their tax cuts. It's the only
That's
thing
right.
that Donald did in his 4 years, right?
That's right.
The major legislative thing he did was cut taxes for the rich. That's why they want to do it.
Yeah, and a couple things before we move on to the next horror is McCarthy first of all never mentions the fact that of the national debt, 25% of it was taken on during the 4 years of Donald's administration. 25% of a debt that's been accumulating for over 250 years or whatever it is. I mean, it's the hypocrisy is insane. And he very seriously wants to look for places to cut. Well, you know what? Stop paying your salary because you don't.
Well, that's the hypocrisy also, Mary. I'm glad you mentioned it real quick. The fact that Republicans with a straight face call themselves deficit hawks, but each time a Republican becomes president, debt goes up, deficit goes up, and the Democrat always has to come clean up the crap, and they never get the credit. And
Right.
again, press in their failure to frame it, in their failure to communicate, makes it seem like a both sides problem. It's infuriating.
It is incredibly infuriating, and I'm not entirely sure why the American voter is not savvy to this yet. It's because you're right. It's a long-standing pattern, and it's deeply frustrating. Okay, let's move on to committee assignments. Keeping in mind that while Waj is talking about the horrific nature of some of these, that these are people who will have access to some of the most highly classified sensitive information in the American whatever it's called, the security community, which should send a chill down everybody's spine. Okay, Wash, especially considering they want to destroy America.
Well, bringing together our mutual horrors, the fact that Kevin McCarthy has rewarded some of the most extreme and violent members of Congress with these committee assignments. So just to name a few, in the Oversight Committee, now you have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is a former 9/11 truther, who is anti-vaccine, and who sympathizes with violent insurrectionists who she believes are victimized. You have Matt Gaetz, Lauren Boebert, and you have Paul Gosar. Paul Gosar and Marjorie Taylor Greene, as you all know, met with Nick Fuentes. And Gosar, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, promoted violence against his colleagues. Who's on the Oversight Committee? Those people. Hooray. Then you got Massey, Norman, and Roy, people who want to destroy the government on the House Rules Committee. Now, it doesn't sound sexy, but that's one of the most important committees because that pretty much sets the agenda for what the House will focus on. So, what do you think they're going to focus on, Mary? Are they going to focus on, I don't know, Social Security, reducing inflation, healthcare? Nope. It's going to be about attacking all of their perceived enemies, right?
Yep.
And by the way, I made this point, and am I wrong? I said MAGA violence works because they intimidated Kevin McCarthy, they terrorized him, and he turned around and rewarded them with these seats. So who's out? Adam Schiff. Who's out? Eric Swalwell. Who's out? Ilhan Omar. And then Kevin McCarthy has the gall to say, I am not going to be working with people who are like, liars or this or that. Oh, but by the way, here's Marjorie Taylor Greene. And what was Adam Schiff doing? Adam Schiff said, hey, I think a violent insurrection is a problem. Let's investigate it. And Ilhan Omar was like, oh, I'm a Black Muslim woman. Apparently, that makes me undesirable to be in the House Foreign
It's
Affairs.
disqualifying, don't you know?
And also this anti-Semitic tweet I did like years ago that I have apologized for because I was criticizing AIPAC. But then Kevin McCarthy's like, I'll show you anti-Semitism. You're not anti-Semitic enough. I'll give you Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah. I think it is to all of our benefits if we stop being stressed out by Republican hypocrisy and we should just expect it. I think that would make all of our lives a little better because they don't care
I
about
don't care.
anything. And you summed it up nicely why the differences between not seating Schiff at all and stripping Gosar and Green of their assignments. And it's a little weird to me that there's no way to around this, but I guess the Speaker of the House is a very powerful person, which I knew, but just like Democrats can't choose their own members, and I would think that there would have to be some process to show why Schiff, et cetera, are unfit. But I guess McCarthy could just bang his Fisher Price gavel, as Danielle calls it, and do whatever he wants. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was our evergreen fellow Jorge. Uh, oh wait, sorry. One other thing quickly before we move on. We're finding out that an FBI agent McGarrigle out of the New York bureau has been arrested and charged with taking payments from a foreign entity. I guess he was being bribed by Oleg Deripaska,
Russian oligarch, right?
Russian oligarch. And I didn't need anybody to convince me that the 2016 election was stolen. I absolutely think it was stolen, and this might just be more proof toward that end. Not that anybody's going to do anything about it. Although this guy will probably go to prison for a very long time. But it just underscores that McCarthy's refusal to seat Schiff on the Judiciary Committee. Wait, not the Judiciary Committee.
Intel.
The other one. Thank you.
Intel.
Intelligence Committee. It just looks worse because Schiff has been on this Russian interference stuff from the beginning. It's an expertise of his, and now he's not allowed to investigate or be on a committee that theoretically would be investigating this.
What's even worse, Mary, is according to that New York Times article that came out this week, where Kevin McCarthy said that Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'll never leave that woman. She has so much sway and power now, not just her, but the extremists have so much sway and power over McCarthy that she told them that you have to look into these violent insurrectionists who are jailed because they're being victimized. And he apparently said, okay, well, I'm open to doing a new inquiry and investigation, not on the violent insurrectionists or those who conspired with them, but on the House Select Committee that investigated them. So it's literally like, it's almost like this parody. If this is the House of Horrors and this is a horror movie, it's almost like a kangaroo court where the judge and jury is filled with criminals who then are supposed to preside over a neutral hearing and trial, and their criminal friends are sitting there just winking at them, right? It's just absurd. And we sit there and we just take it.
Yeah, it is the House of Horrors with funhouse mirrors or something. Okay, so let's go to our buddy Anthony DeVolder or Katara or whatever.
Katara.
What is up this week? I mean, he's in more trouble, although that should go without saying at this point.
Okay, so two of the big ones, right? And I think we should focus on them because I don't think people are focusing on them enough. The first one that hasn't gotten that much attention is that drag queens in Brazil said that Kitara, Anthony DeVolder, Spartacus, Jorge Santos, left Brazil in 2006, came back in 2008, allegedly with money, to compete in Miss Gay Rio de Janeiro. And we have also found out that Jorge Santos first said that he didn't do drag. Then all the video came out and he said, okay, I did do drag, but this is important. He said, I wasn't doing drag. What I did, even though by definition was actually drag, and everyone who sees me sees that I'm doing drag, was me just quote unquote having fun. The reason why I'm spending a little bit of time on this, and when it comes to the hypocritical arguments of the Republican Party, it's not just hypocrisy, which is appalling. because as this is happening, the Republican Party and the conservative movement is unleashing, as we've said on your show before, stochastic terrorism against drag queens and the LGBTQ plus and the
Yep.
rest of us for being groomers. So
Yep.
as they have a drag queen in Congress with the name of George Santos, these people without shame are attacking and unleashing violence and intimidation against actual drag queens. That's one. And the second one I'll say is George Santos just 2 days ago said, you know, that $500,000 personal loan that I gave to my campaign? Guess what? That wasn't a personal loan. And I won't tell you where the money came from, and I won't tell you why I lied about it, which means he has, again, opened himself up to potential criminal charges for campaign finance violation, which I think will be coming.
Yeah, I mean, he's lied on his one way or the other, whether originally or now. He lied on his FTC forms. You can't do that. That is illegal. So you can't say, "Oh, I'm giving my campaign $700,000 on somebody else's behalf, but pretend that it's from me." It's just it's crazy. And now he's lying about who his campaign treasurer is or was. I mean, the whole thing is a mess. However, for some bizarre reason, I'm skeptical that even if the ethics committee finds something that McCarthy's going to do anything about it. I think that even if he's dragged out of Congress in handcuffs, he will serve from prison.
I agree. No, Mary,
so
I agree with
desperate.
you. I'm
Yeah.
the one who's been saying for 2 weeks. I wrote this piece said that George Santos is right where he belongs. Why should he resign? And
Yeah.
let me tell you why I say that. You know, people might say, "Oh, that's being too cynical." If I'm George Santos, if that is my name, the first man on the moon in drag, I'll look around me and I'll say, "Who am I surrounded by?" There's Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar, who were stripped of their assignments from Democrats for inciting violence. Now they have power and sit in the House Oversight Committee. There's Lauren Boebert, who's never met a gun that she doesn't want to make love to. There is Matt Gaetz, who no one cared that he had groomer allegations against him, and the leader of MAGA is still Donald, who is a twice impeached vulgarian who incited a violent insurrection. None of them
Mhm.
have resigned. In fact, they're more popular than ever. So what I've done isn't that bad. Why should I resign? I'm right where I belong. And
Yeah.
Kevin McCarthy has refused to criticize him and says, hey, innocent until proven guilty, because Kevin McCarthy desperately needs Jorge Santos's vote. He only has a slim 4-vote
Yeah.
majority in the
Yeah.
House.
And two things. One is that McCarthy keeps saying he has to respect the will of the voters. The voters of Nassau County and Queens voted for him, and he needs to stay there unless and until he's found to have committed some crime. And even the people who voted for him are saying, we didn't vote for this guy. We don't know who this guy is. So that's just an absolutely absurd argument to make, because he committed so much fraud that there was no way for the voters to know exactly who they were voting for. And the other great irony that, especially as a New Yorker, just kills me every time, is that the only reason Santos got elected in the first place is because of the gerrymandering
Oh,
debacle.
oh,
That, I mean, I lay at the feet of Andrew Cuomo,
yep, as you should.
but a lot of people are spreading blame around to the Democratic Party in New York State. I don't know enough about it, but it is pretty upsetting that.
We knock Republicans, but let me give them a rare compliment. Is that the Nassau County Republicans have actually gone out publicly last week and said that George
Yeah.
Santos has to resign. So his fellow colleagues from his district, his constituents have. And what we found out again, since we're talking about Santos, another big piece of news that kind of popped, but then people forgot about because this is the world we live in, is that key Republican influencers knew about his lies
Yeah.
and kept quiet. And at least Stefanik vouched for him. And now there's pressure on Stefanik, the number 4 in the House. Well, excuse me, the number 4 Republican. Why did you vouch for a man who lies about his mother dying in 9/11, being
Yeah.
Jewish? That's the egregious thing, Mary. We kind of laugh about it, but it takes a specific shameless skill set to, with a straight face, lie about your family surviving the Holocaust and your mother dying in 9/11. Even Donald, I don't think would, like, I don't think
No,
he'd go that far.
This guy's a straight up sociopath, and I had the great misfortune of living in Nassau County for 25 years, and it's trending more right. Has been for a long time, although the last congressperson was a Democrat. So, you know, I think that I don't want to give them too much credit. The Republican Party in Nassau County definitely understands that if they don't take this stand, they will suffer electorally in
Yes.
2024. So it's just pragmatic, and we are just being reminded that Donald did lie about losing hundreds of close friends, as if he has any, on September 11th. But there's something particularly unnerving about Santos's level of sociopathy. I mean,
Yeah,
because it's so unattached to any reality whatsoever.
well, or also, if we're talking about Santos, the evergreen, I mean, I think he's going to be evergreen. I mean, the more stuff that came out this week with a straight face, in an interview that he did in Portuguese, he said that I don't know why this makes me laugh. I rarely laugh out loud, but he said with a straight face, he was robbed in broad daylight in a busy New York intersection where the thief, who's not white or black, took his shoes and his suitcase and no one helped him. And in addition to that, he said he survived an assassination attempt.
Wow. Well, and why? Like, what purposes does that? First of all, you're just insulting New Yorkers, because as a New Yorker, I know that would never happen.
Never.
Never, ever, ever. Like, a million people would be attacking the mugger. So he's just absurd. We're at the end, but watch, I'm going to break a rule, because I'm so on the edge of my seat about Georgia. But I just want to ask a very simple vocabulary question, because it might help set my mind at ease. Fani Willis said on Tuesday, I believe,
Yeah.
that indictments or a decision would be imminent. What, in your view, does imminent mean? Because I know what imminent means, and
Clock is ticking.
yeah.
The imminent to me is the imminent to me is when I asked my father when I was a kid, "Hey, Abu, are we going to Toys R Us?" And he said, yeah, inshallah," in that tone. It's
Oh
the
boy.
imminent is the inshallah, which inshallah is the like Muslim equivalent of forget about it. Based on the tone and circumstance, it can mean anything. It literally means God willing, but in this case, it means it ain't happening. So to me, this imminent is inshallah.
Stop. Because imminent really means very, very soon.
Yeah, like this week. Look, even if he gets indicted,
I
we've
know.
talked about this before. I know you're breaking the rule. Even if he gets indicted, I don't think he's going to prison. But the fact that he hasn't even been indicted yet,
That's all I'm saying. Watch, he needs to be indicted.
he
for
got on
something.
Facebook quicker than before he got indicted. He got back on Facebook.
Which is another horror all of its own. Waj Ali, thank you so much for hanging out with me today and spending some time in the House of Horrors. I know it's not easy. And congratulations again on the publication of the paperback of your phenomenal book, Go Back to Where You Came From. Everybody, please go check it out. It's an excellent, excellent read. It is a quintessentially American story, and it will make you laugh out loud as well. Waj, thanks so much. And I will hopefully see you next week with the nerds.
Call me Jorge.
Bye, Jorge.